Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spiritual Journey podcast. My name is Nimesh Radia. I'm your host. I always love starting each episode by saying thank you. We're recording this at the beginning of March, and I'm just really feeling the new vibration. The sun is shining. I'm in London. It doesn't happen that often. I'm just feeling really grateful. So thank you for everyone that supported the podcast. Our objective is really to simplify spirituality and guide people on their journey. This is our way of giving back. And we love what we get to do. So thank you for allowing us to guide you. I am an Akashic record reader and an Akashic trainer, podcast host, podcast creator, as well as spiritual coach and mentor. I love what I get to do. I get to guide people to truly be their authentic selves, to shine their light, to release the programming. I really do feel like we've been pushed in so many different ways this year and the last couple of years, and I'm here for it. And I heal as I heal others. I love what I get to do. So thank you, thank you, thank you. This podcast won't be where it is today. I won't be where I am today without my beautiful co-host, the stunning, the healer extraordinaire, and now published author, Stacey Brown. Stacey, I got to do it. Introduce yourself, please.
So good to be here again with you, friends. Thank you so much for your commitment to tuning into this podcast. We really appreciate every single one of our listeners. My name is Stacey. I'm an intuitive. I do readings for people from around the world. I'm also a spiritual coach and mentor and an Akashic record reader, as well as a published author. My book, Journey to Soul Center, Discovering the Gift of Surrender, is available on Amazon and Audible. And I'm really looking forward to getting into this topic today and seeing what unfolds.
Yes, so am I. And, full disclosure for everybody, we started recording this episode and we were kind of in full flow and whatever was going through, and Stacey's machine crashed. So, we're in Mercury Shadow Self, but I'm also calling our guides to make sure the technology works. But also, maybe we were meant to record it. So I'm very open to whatever that looks like. So this episode is in a series, really. We started with talking about trauma, and then the week after we talked about our inner child and inner child healing, which was last week. And this week we're going to talk all about spiritually bypassing. And next week we'll talk about the dark night of soul, and all of it's connected. All of it, our facets. Dark night of soul is really what I feel like a lot of people may be going through right now in terms of kind of going through some deep spiritual awakening. So we'll talk more about that this week. But this week we're talking about spiritually bypassing and kind of avoiding the true healing this requires and doing the shadow work. So if we start with what is spiritual bypassing? Spiritual bypassing is really being honest and dealing with the darkness that's inside of you. We get so much focus, so much pressure to be positive, always positive mental attitude. And if you're feeling something, you're a soul having a human experience. So being true with what you're feeling, if you have darkness inside you, then embracing it. We all have light and dark. There's no, we have daylight, we have nighttime, right? I love the nighttime. I love the moon. I love, but so we all have light and darkness in us too. And it's there serving us for a reason. So really understanding your emotions and embracing it is a big part of why we're here. I really do feel like now we are being pushed in a way that to deal with our darkness. Examples is ignoring trauma, it's suppressing emotions, is over relying on affirmations. And really my recommendation as we begin this episode is to really ask you guys to have an honest conversation with yourself. Are you ignoring some of the things that's happening to you physically, mentally, emotionally? Because awareness is always the first step. There's no judgment here, but ignoring the darkness, because there's so much pressure. Oh my God, you always got to be positive, use affirmations, and, always have a smile on your face. And sure, but at the same time, you're a soul having a human experience. So have the human experience. Everything in your world is serving you some kind of way. So ignoring trauma and really kind of always trying to be positive, using affirmations, and what you're doing is you're pushing your emotion down. you're pushing whatever you're going through down, and you're like a volcano. If you keep pushing it down, eventually it has to come up. I mean, last week we talked a lot about inner child healing and, kind of dealing with the trauma that maybe we went through as a childhood. Whatever it may be, if you're listening to this episode, then it's time for you to deal with that darkness. It's time for you to deal with whatever's happening in your deep side, because I do believe the universe is pushing us to do this more and more, and it's preparing us for whatever's coming next. I feel like the planet's going through a shift. I talk a lot about it, and you've got to be ready for it. And so everything that's happening to you is preparing you for what's coming, but you have to focus on the now. So Stacey, I'm going to ask you, right? And just as I asked the listener, what are you holding on to? What are you not healing? What are you, what emotion is maybe there? What healing you ready to embrace? I talked a lot about inner child last week and kind of the inner child healing I'm doing. I'm here for it. I know there's a shift happening inside and all and outside all of us. So Stacey, as I ask you, what does spiritual bypassing mean to you? And what are you working on right now that may be on the darker side?
So I think spiritual bypassing is when we are avoiding dealing with the deeper issues that we might need to face in order to be the best version of ourselves. And it's not always sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes healing can be challenging. And I would say that one of the things that I'm really trying to work through is the relationship that I've had with my father and how that's impacted the relationships that I've had with men in my life, and really facing it head on. I no longer want to allow it to rule my life. And I know that facing it is the only way through it. And it can be hard, right? Like it can be hard to be in that space where you're not feeling sunshine and rainbows. It can be hard when you're feeling like the world is caving in on you, but it's happening for a reason. These things are coming up for a reason. It's there to expand us and to grow us. And I think that a lot of times people think that once they reach a certain point, things get easier, right? Like once I work through this, then I'll be better. But the fact is, we're always working on ourselves. We're a constant work in progress. As long as we're living and breathing, we're growing and changing and shifting. And we can choose to ignore it and bury it, but it always comes to the surface in some way.
So very true. And it's interesting, you talk about your dad, your father, and it's just a lot of our again, it's all different for everybody, but a lot of our trauma, a lot of our emotions are typically come in two areas. It's either from our blood family, and I always remind people that our soul picked our blood family to expand us, to teach us something, not always to love us. And the other area is relationships. And because we have deep soul contracts, right? And the soul contracts we pick are here to expand us in some kind of way. But let's just talk about how do we recognize spiritual bypassing. We talked some about it already, but just some things we talked about already. Overemphasis on positivity. Using affirmations. You'll hear me say quite often, everything happens for a reason. I actually believe that. But just saying that and not actually then embracing what the reasons are is also part of it. Detaching from emotions, pushing back our anger, our grief, or sadness, not crying. I had a bereavement in the family recently, and I was talking to some family members about it, and it's just there's no right way or wrong way to grieve, but you got to feel your emotions. If you want to cry, right? This is the thing, and don't always trying to be high vibe and. But the other thing we're talking about is avoidance doing the work. If you're feeling something, if you've been through some trauma, then understanding the lessons and doing the deep work is part of it. the other one which is interesting is spiritual superiority, and it's that spiritual ego. You think you've done so much work, and everyone else is going through something, and you're not going through it. And I have to be honest, I try to be super careful of that, because I I've been through lots of things spiritually, and I have access to guides, but I'm still having a human experience. There was a time that I just loved being in the spiritual realm all the time, and I realized I was doing it because I was just enjoying it, but also I chose to be human. So having the human experience is also part of it, right? And using spirituality to escape, relying on meditations, doing rituals, being on courses, and all of that. I'm not telling you not to do any of that, of course, but be honest with yourself. What's your intention? It's a really interesting journey. It's just, spirituality is, embrace the spiritual. Everything does happen for a reason. But what is that reason? So, how do you recognize spiritual bypassing in you, Stace? And what would your advice be to others to truly recognize if they are spiritually bypassing?
So I think that when I am in a space where I feel like I have to put on a front, then I know that I'm bypassing something, right? When I'm not in the space of feeling the genuine feelings of whatever I'm going through, that's how I know. I know when I have to force a smile, when I have to force anything, that I'm probably avoiding something that I need to deal with. And it's interesting because I'm in a season where I'm definitely growing and shifting and changing, like at a really rapid pace. And it is when I start to disconnect from myself is when I notice that that's the issue, right? When I'm not connected and I kind of glaze over and numb out, I think that's when I know that I'm avoiding something that I need to deal with. And I know that other people can relate to this, right? Like when the world gets to be too much, we shut down. And when you shut down, you're not letting in anything. And you can't possibly heal from that space.
I mean, it's interesting, though, right? It's that recognizing what you're doing inside. Because how often do we go and search in Google or look outside for answers and not actually look inside? For me, the spiritual bypassing and knowing that you're doing it is your answers are inside you. And, we are a soul having a human experience. And for me, the most difficult part of this was embracing my humanity. Because, I love the work I get to do. I love the spiritual side. But embracing the human side, recognizing that this vessel I'm in is important for this spiritual work was a big part of my journey. So embrace your humanity. That's such an important part. Yes, embrace the spiritual side, do the meditations, obviously listen to the podcast, whatever else. But that would be my biggest recommendation is to embrace the human side. What is happening in your human world? Because sometimes we use spirituality to bypass the human experience, right? If we're feeling trauma, if we're feeling emotional, if we're going through some sort of relationship. Stacey, still there? I'm just checking because actually we didn't share that because we recorded this episode before and or at least part of it, and we had some technical issues. So I was just checking on Stacey because she froze on my screen. But no, honestly, embracing the humanity, doing the inner work, balancing spirituality in practicality, i.e., if you're spending hours and hours doing some sort of meditations and doing the ritual work and doing all, make sure you're not doing it at the expense of avoiding the physical world. So finding that balance. And your external world is also an interesting reflection to your internal. So what are you telling other people to do? Are you asking other people to embrace their pain? or just to let it go. I mean, you hear me say things quite often, like everything happens to you for a reason. I'm not asking you to ignore the trauma. I'm letting you know that everything does happen. So the trauma that you're going through, or the whatever you're going through, is serving you. But without asking the question and understanding it, then ultimately you're responsible for your journey. You're responsible for and embrace it. Though this is the thing where I feel like the spiritual world and the human world are merging, but the human and the spirit within us is a more disconnected than before. And the reason is, if I was to describe it, I feel like we're going through such a shift, and the soul, the spirit, is excited and ready for the shift because it's been working. Our souls work many lifetimes to be here at this time. The human can feel the shift, like a shift like we've never been before. Really wants to understand it, really wants to control it, and that's where the disconnect comes. And this is what we're feeling, more and more disconnected, and the trauma in us is ready to be released, which is why I feel like this conversation is so important. So what are you bypassing? If I go to those signals again, embracing your humanity, are you embracing your humanity? Are you balancing spirituality and practicality? Are you being human? What does that look like for you? When other people are going through something, how do you respond? Do you tell them to embrace it? Or do you tell them just to be positive? Because that's a clue how you respond to your own trauma, and ultimately take responsibility. So, Stacey, how are you taking responsibility? We talked about, actually, last week's Inner Child episode for me, I guess, was quite, that's kind of how I'm making sure that I am embracing my journey, because I feel like my inner child's coming up quite a lot. What's happening for you? You mentioned the masculine, you mentioned your dad. When I talk about spiritually bypassing, what are you going to do to make sure that you actually embrace whatever you're going through full on? And I know you do anyway. I love how you're always vulnerable. It's your superpower. But I'd love for you to share.
Yeah, I mean, when stuff is coming up, it's time to deal with it. And I wouldn't say that I have avoided dealing with the masculine in my life. I would say that it's taken me time to peel away the layers of it. And with every layer, there's always another layer. And in this season, I'm recognizing that there's more to be done in this area. There's more for me to work on. And I want to have healthy relationships in my life. And in order for me to do that, I really need to get into the past and digging deep into understanding how that's created the dynamics that I've had in the relationships that I've had throughout my life. And I know a huge part of that is the relationship with my father. And it's been a struggle from as far back as I can remember. And it's something that, though I don't have him in my life, I still have the impact of what he has been in my life. And I still carry that with me. And it's something that I'm really ready to release in this season. And I don't want to bypass it. I don't want to avoid it. I want to face it and commit to it and work through it so that I can be a better partner and a better mother and a better friend. And I think it's just something that I'm uncovering in this season that has been holding me back, and I didn't even realize it was holding me back.
Thank you for sharing and being so vulnerable, as always. Like I said, it's just our relationships give such a clue. And for our listeners, sometimes we talk about divine timing and repeat patterns, right? It comes up in spirituality quite often, divine timing, things will happen in divine timing. I agree with that, for sure. I trust in divine timing. I trust that things will come up when they're ready to come up. But again, it's something else we use to avoid doing the work. And so But Stace talked about it, right? Her relationship with the dad, even though she's not in contact with him, is still impacting her day to day. And that's what a soul contract looks like, right? Just because you finish a relationship with somebody doesn't mean the learning's finished, right? And so this is the best advice we can give is be honest with yourself. Where are you avoiding the difficult emotions? Are you waiting on divine timing? Are you doing the deep work? Are you doing, relationships? What's happening in your relationships? What's happening with your health? What's happening with your mindset? And where are you being maybe overly positive? I know as, the men, being the more, the masculine side of us always wants to find a solution. Wants a quick fix. I'm going to go on a course and everything will be fixed. But it's about embracing your human journey. So again, the biggest thing that's coming from this episode for me is, what are you avoiding? And I know there's times I've avoided. I mean, spiritual bypass, being positive. I feel like I'm generally quite a positive person, but I'm human, right? I'm experiencing stuff. So journaling, time in nature, being honest with myself. Mirror work is so, so powerful. We spend so often kind of focusing on our physical body. How much time do we spend loving ourselves from the inside? And that's what mirror work does. So look in the mirror, just connect with your eyes and just, what are you feeling? Is there some darkness? But say what's in your heart. I always recommend by starting, I love you, I thank you, and appreciate you. I thank you and appreciate you, I love you. But this is because it's important. Right now, I feel like it's so much more important than ever before. Doing the shadow work, it really is a big part of transformation. And, it's kind of, we talked about the inner child healing. We talked about trauma. It's all connected. It's all, I guess in many ways, that is the shadow work, right? The inner child, dealing with the emotional stuff, dealing with trauma. If you're not dealing with those things, that is a form of spiritual bypass. And none of us are saying it's easy, right? I mean, it's actually shared vulnerably. It's not easy, right? It does require. I'm not going to say it's hard, because who decides what's hard or easy? I'm just saying it's enlightening. It's empowering. I mean, we see a lot of it all the time with the work that we do with our clients, with the mentorship that we do. We take people through the spiritual and kind of ensure that they do deal with the shadow work, whether that's in a child, whether that's trauma, whether that's stuff is always going to come up, and the universe is always giving us clues. So that'd be my other question: is what clues is the universe giving you? What are you pushing away? Because our intuition is such a massive clue, and we bypass it all the time. We ignore it. It's just like, but what is your intuition? What is your intuition telling you as you listen to this episode? And if you just close your eyes and ask, what am I bypassing? What am I ignoring? I feel like you'll get your answer. I feel like for most of us, we know what that looks like. But there's so much power in shadow work. It's a way of accelerating your spiritual journey. So if you missed the last two episodes around trauma and inner child, I would ask you to go back and listen, because there's such a big part of doing the shadow work and embracing who you are. It's such a big part of it. And I know spiritual circles we're in. It's so easy to spiritually bypass, to be positive, to do lots of meditations, to get embraced in the work that we're doing for others. But healers need healing too. So Stace, what other advice could you give, and what's coming up for you as we're having this conversation? Because I feel like there's stuff coming up for you. I'd love for you to share.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's coming up for me is the realization that we are constantly a work in progress. That just because we've dealt with something from our past doesn't mean that it's not going to come up again. I tell people often, like, when you go through a trauma, it can re-trigger trauma from the past. And I found that going through everything I went through with my son a couple of years ago really opened up some wounds that I thought I had healed, with specifically with my father. And I have done so much work on this that I find it almost frustrating at times that I'm still dealing with it. But that relationship had such an impact on me at such a young age and for such a long time that it really has shaped and molded the person that I am in some great ways and in some not so great ways. And I feel like there's been a massive impact on the relationships that I've had with men in my life because of this relationship with my father. And I would just say to our listeners, it's more painful to hold on to it than it is to deal with it. It's more painful to hold on to it than it is to deal with it. It's like the whole ripping the Band-Aid off, right? You can like do it slowly and be uncomfortable, or you can just rip the Band-Aid off and get it done with. And I think that in this season, a lot of us who are awakening are recognizing that there's things that we need to heal. And in order to do that, you've got to do the work. And it looks different for everybody. I mean, a huge part of my healing has been through my writing and my journaling. That's a space where I process a lot. But for somebody else, it might be going to counseling. For somebody else, it might be getting a mentor. It really depends on what feels right for you. But I would say avoiding it is so much more painful because it does come up regardless of whether you try to avoid it or not. And this is something that we help people with all the time, right? When people decide to do mentorship, one of the things that we start them off with, in addition to the awareness of who you are now, is delving into the stuff from the past and really digging deep and understanding why you are the way you are. Without that awareness, you can't make changes. And I think that's what's coming up for me right now is this deep desire to shift things into a positive space for myself by releasing that negative stuff that I've been holding on to for so long.
Nice. I guess I'd ask you and others to be kind to yourself too, because as I said earlier, I don't really believe in repeat programs. So I think the same thing keeps coming up for you and you feel like you've dealt with it. I just feel stuff comes up when we're ready to heal it. So it's like, using Stacey, your example, your relationship with your dad, I feel like our soul contracts with the masculine or the feminine, whatever you're dealing with, goes so deep that it takes multiple cycles to release the trauma that we've agreed to release in this lifetime. So, if this episode is triggering and, you feel like there's stuff that you dealt with and it keeps coming up, be kind to yourself. Because you probably have dealt with it. But what if this is just another layer? It's like an onion. It's peeling back the onion. So keep peeling away. And, that really is, Stacey said it earlier, the spiritual journey is not, anyone that says they're fully spiritually awakened and healed, I'll always smile at, because I really feel like the healing journey is a lifetime thing, right? But it's so powerful doing this work, and understanding kind of why we're here and embracing it, because I do feel, like I said earlier, we've been pushed and pushed and pushed. So do the shadow. If you're listening, having that honest conversation with yourself is really important. Balancing the light and the dark. Healing is not about elimination of emotions. It's about integrating them. The ego and fear and whatever you're going through, whatever you're feeling, is such a big part of it. And I said, be kind to yourself. You're being guided. I feel like the universe is guiding and pushing us more now than ever before. So embrace it. And so what do you do, right? Of course, doing the stuff we're always recommending, journaling, and be honest with, and we'll finish with some journal prompts, but be honest with what are you feeling and journal about it. What are you holding on to? And we'll finish with some journal prompts, I'm sure. But also, Stace mentioned it too. Get help if you feel like you need it. Asking for help is a sign of strength. Maybe it's our mentorship program. We have a beautiful mentorship program which really we hold people's spaces as they're going through a transformation. And if it's not us, then find somebody else, whoever you feel, whoever resonates, whoever you have a soul contract with. Maybe it's therapy, maybe it's energy healing, maybe it's booking an Akashic record reading, whatever feels right. If you feel like you need help, but always check with your intention. And just like I've said a few times, are you embracing the human experience? I know, and I reckon the reason I keep talking about it because I recognize it. For those that are listening, not watching, I'm smiling because I know I recognize it in me. I know that I've this human experience, and sometimes I wonder why am I having this human experience? Because I love the spiritual side. So, but I recognize I've chosen to do it. I've chosen to have this human experience. So who am I to avoid it? But things like setting boundaries with yourself, toxic positivity, your language that you use on you is such a big clue. So, Stacey, let me ask you, what's the language that you have with yourself like?
It depends on the day. I would say sometimes my self-talk is really good and really positive. And then I would say there are days where I'm really hard on myself and really critical. And I think we're our own toughest critics, right? It's easier to be hard on ourselves and than it is to be hard on anybody else. And I feel like there are days where I'm really in a good space and I'm like, okay, Stace, we've got this, but then I think there are other times where I beat myself up for not being further along in the process or for not feeling like I'm doing enough or being enough. And sometimes that self-talk can get really harsh. And a huge part of that goes back to the relationship with my father. He was very verbally abusive. And the things that he said still play in my head like a recording at times. And so I would say when I'm in that negative space, it's probably more his voice that I hear than anyone else's. That inner critic sounds like my dad. And that is really, really hard to have that playing over in your head and remain in a positive space. So I allow myself to feel it. And sometimes it gets the best of me, Nimesh. Like sometimes it really does. Sometimes I have a hard time fighting it off and I have to let myself sit with it and allow myself to be in that space, knowing that I will pull out of it. But I want to do more than that. I want to do more than just feel it. I want to release it.
And that's why I say, Stace, thank you for sharing so powerfully. Being kind to ourselves, because we judge ourselves so much. Actually, when you're having that self-talk that isn't maybe supportive, who decides what's negative or positive? But ask yourself that question: whose voice is it? Maybe that gives you a clue on the trauma that you need to release, right? Because knowing that voice and recognizing it is actually powerful too. This spiritual journey isn't meant to be easy, right? Because there's so much that we need to release, so much we need to go through, but it can be empowering. It doesn't always have to be hard, but it does require you to go deep. It's just your answers are in you. What are you avoiding? I mean, we've talked today about, my inner child, me avoiding the human experience because I love the spiritual side, but I know that I'm meant to have this human experience, and it's just interesting because sometimes I think about my mentor. You guys have heard me talk about Sidra. For those that are regular listeners, she's left this realm, and she passed away aged only 30 years old, March 2020, and she's now one of my guides. And I often wonder, well, hold on, she's on the other side. She's kind of, she can touch many more souls on that side, and I'm here having the human experience. So what would it be like if we swapped? But I know I chose this human experience. I know I chose to be here. I know I chose this vessel, and I know I chose this human experience to truly expand my soul. So acceptance, awareness, which is what we're trying to do with the words that we use on this podcast, and then acceptance, accepting that you chose this human journey is such a big part of, and deal with it. Be kind to yourself. Just whatever you've been through. If you feel like, because sometimes it's like repeat programs. I'm sure Stacey, you said it to yourself. It's like, oh my God, I thought I've dealt with this masculine stuff with my dad. Why does it keep coming up? And it's like you start to judge yourself. What makes you say you didn't deal with the last cycle, and this is just another cycle? And this is because stuff comes up when you're ready to heal. It means that you've done the work. It means that you're ready to release it because you've done the pre-work. So what if we can deal with ourselves with kindness but still embrace it? How does that sound to you, Stace?
I think you're spot on.
Can you be kind to yourself?
I mean, I believe so. Like I said, I think that when I'm in that space, a lot of times it comes through in such an abrupt, harsh way. But a lot of it is because of the dynamic that I had with my father and what that was like growing up. And that inner voice is tough. It's tough. And it can almost break me at points. But I think you made a very valid point that it's not that we're not healing, it's that layers of it come up at different times, right? Like we peel away a layer and there's another layer there that we've got to work through. So it's not to say that you haven't worked through part of it, but if it's coming up again, there's another part to heal. And I think that's what I'm experiencing right now is there's another layer for me to heal. And so I'm determined to do that in whatever way I need to and allow myself to feel it in all the ways that I need to. Like it might not be all positive and, loving and sunshine and rainbows. Some of it's going to be dark, but I know if I deal with it, that I'm going to let the light in on that darkness.
So if I said to you, Stace, that how do you feel about your soul asking and choosing this experience with your dad? How does that make you feel?
Oh, it makes me feel sick to my stomach. It makes me feel like, why would anyone choose this?
So again, I'm not putting you on the spot, but the healer that you are and the light that you're shining, can you accept that part of that is because of what you experienced?
Yes, very much so. I would not be the healer and the light worker that I am right now if it weren't for all the experiences that I've been through.
And so I would never ask anybody to celebrate deep traumatic experiences. Of course not. But recognize the growth that you've had from them helps you to understand why you picked the journey you did.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't allow you to fully embrace it and accept it because you're still gonna have questions. I talk to my soul all the time, like, wait, why do we pick this journey? Why do we pick that? Question it, of course. Have a conversation with your soul. Try and understand it. But if you can embrace your journey, the more powerful it is. So again, Stacey, I feel like this series is so powerful in kind of doing the deep spiritual work that we've really been asking. We've been asked to do by the universe at this time. And so yes, I know we've gone deep over the last few episodes. It really feels like it's needed. But again, I'll go back to your answers are inside you. Ask for help, of course, look externally, maybe mentorship, the mentorship we do and all that. But make sure you check with your intention. If you're looking to be fixed, then you're doing the wrong thing. If you're looking to bypass and not have the human experience, then you're doing the wrong thing. And actually, Stacey, I've got some journal prompts in mind that I don't normally ask you, but I just feel them coming through. So we talked a lot about emotions. So are there emotions that you're avoiding, you're suppressing because of that you're not ready to reveal, or maybe you don't feel they're spiritual? What are those emotions? Do you use spiritual beliefs like everything happens for a reason, divine timing, to avoid taking responsibilities? How can you balance spiritual practices with real world healing? And lastly, what are you holding on to that you're ready to heal and you're ready to release? How do they sound to you, Stace? Anything you want to add from a journal prompts perspective or anything?
No, I think they're powerful. And I think that digging deep and taking the time to think about what you've been through and write about it is so powerful. Writing has been such a key to my healing. And I would encourage you, friends, if you have not already done it, to take this time with these journal prompts and dig deep and see what comes up.
Thanks, Stacey. And be kind to yourself. I keep going back to it. This spiritual bypassing, and when we kind of become aware that we've been spiritually bypassing, sometimes we start to judge ourselves. Don't do that. Be kind to yourself. And if you feel like you've been spiritually bypassing, then that awareness is beautiful. Actually, it means you've got power to do something about it. So take that power. Sit with yourself. As Stacey says, journal about it. Sit with it and just understand. And then take action. If it's inner child stuff, if it's trauma, what are you going to do to release it? Start by journaling, as Stacey said. Take it from there. If we can help, reach out. Actually, just a reminder, we have a beautiful monthly healing session that we do. It's going to be on the 13th of March, so this Thursday. We will talk about the current energy. We'll talk about the full moon and the vibration it brings. I'll take you through a guided meditation, and both me and Stacey will open the records and we'll channel a message. It's a super healing session, so please do join us. I'll include the link in the show notes. If you can't find it, then DM any one of us. We'll send it to you. It's a safe space. It's a bubble. It's a beautiful time to heal. We can definitely have this sort of conversation, that session. But yeah, take that action today. Maybe join healing spaces, join communities that hold your space, and be kind to yourself. And if we can help book an Akashic record reading, we have a new mentorship program which takes the phase 1 of spiritual mentorship to truly understand who you are, takes it to a phase 2 where we guide you to become a spiritual mentor. If that appeals, reach out, book a discovery call, we can take you through it. I love what I get to do, Stace. Thank you for this space. And I'm going to hand over to you to share any wisdom that you want to close with and close us up.
I'm so grateful for this podcast and the introspection that it triggers in me and my own healing. And I hope that you, our dear listener, can walk away from this experience being a little bit more enlightened and knowing that there is freedom in facing the pain and moving forward. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for being a part of this community. If you have suggestions for topics you would like us to cover, please reach out and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. We love all the feedback that we get from everyone. It's always so positive and uplifting. And we're really grateful to do what we do. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Stacey. Sending everyone the biggest spiritual hug. Hopefully you can feel our love, our intention. Love and light to everybody. Bye for now.